Welcome back, everybody. Today's tutorial is going to be making 2 pairs of wire wrapped earrings. You'll see I've got the tools in front of me that we'll be using today, which are going to be round nose and chain nose pliers and a pair of flush cutters or nippers. And I've got the beads in front of me. You can see that there aren't too many that we're going to need to do these earrings. And you'll also see that the color palette is quite similar. I bought these beads, which I am not quite sure if they're a stone or if they're glass. If I could have given my past self some advice, it would have been to better label my beads in the beginning, where I got them from, what their names were, things like that. I did not always do that, and I've been, that's something that I have been much more conscientious about as of late. So if I could offer you that advice, definitely when you get your beads, label them. In any case, I had them in different shapes, kind of this flat oval, and then a circular shape, a disc shape, and they look kind of creamy, almost like a little hint of pink in some sense, and kind of deep, a chocolate mocha kind of brown in another. They really kind of act as a neutral, so you can do different things with them. So we're going to be making 2 different pairs. In this pair, we're going to be adding a rhodonite bead and a bicone bead. And then in this pair, we're going to be using some chip beads in peach moonstone. And we're going to try it out with a bicone as well and see how that looks. And to get everything strung together, instead of using eye pins or head pins like what we used in our last tutorial, we're going to be using 24 gauge wire. This is anti-copper wire, and we're going to use that to string the beads and wrap them, and then we'll attach them to our ear wire. So thanks everybody for joining me, and let's get started. So I'm going to start out with the oval beads, and these beads, because I do think they're a type of stone, you can see that there's already quite a bit of variation in them, and so I went through all the ones that I had like this, and I picked the ones that were closest in color. And then what you want to do is you want to examine the beads to pick out the best side in terms of matching pattern and color. You also want to look for any imperfections. So this one has a chip in it. So we're going to flip this back over and we're going to use this side. And then we'll just determine which side of this one we want to use. And I think we're probably going to go with this side here. And this is going to be the front of the bead, and you'll see when we get to our wire wrapping that we can that when we wrap it with the wire as opposed to just putting it on a head pin, we can make it so that way the beads don't spin around on the wire, and you actually do get a front and a back to the earring. So we're going to grab our wire. And you always want to cut off a little bit more than you need. And because we're going to also be basically folding this in half, so we want to have enough length to string what we want to string in terms of beads. So I'll take my cutters. And we'll take the first bead. And we'll get it about halfway onto the cord. I mean, you don't have to be exact on this because we're going to be trimming and twisting and things like that, and it will eventually look the way that it's supposed to. But you want to get it about halfway on your cord, and then you want to take the bottom portion with the front of the bead with your chosen front facing you. You want to take the bottom piece of the wire and bend it back. So that way it's in the back of the bead. can see it kind of looks like that now. And bring your two wires together. You can see they don't match in length, but again, it doesn't matter. This is going to get trimmed off eventually. And at this point, you can choose to either just keep them together like this, and we can string the beads on top, or we can twist. I'm going to just string the beads on top. So I'm going to grab my rhodonite beads. And you can see there's a lot of nice variation in rhodonite beads. And where I wanted my two focal beads to kind of match in size and color, you don't have to be as picky with your supporting beads if you don't want. I want to let the variation of the rhodonite really kind of shine through on this piece and not have them all be matchy-matchy. But that is totally your choice. You can go through and you can find beads that are more uniform in pattern and color. So I'm going to string this on to both ends of the wire. And bring the bead down as far as I can. And I would prefer to not have that gap, but you might not be able to avoid it. It's not a huge gap, and it probably looks bigger in the camera than what it does in real life. And then decide how many of these rhodonite beads you want to put on before you're going to add your bicone. And I usually am able to work faster, but trying to do this through the camera, I've got my phone set up. I can't get as close to stuff as I usually do. So I'm just kind of picking some variations in the rhodonite bead. And that looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is I want to pick up my bicone. And try to get that strung on. There we go, that's the front. Now as I'm looking at this, I'm actually thinking I might like the bicone down here. And this is where, instead of taking these beads off, which I can totally do, because we haven't wrapped and cut or done anything yet, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to grab my wire and I'm going to start this earring, but I'm going to do this earring with the bicone on the bottom to see if I like it better. So I went ahead and strung the second earring, this time with the bicone on the bottom, and I do like that better. So I'm going to go ahead and just take these off. And restring. And this is usually the way that I work, is I will lay, oops, I want to get them on both wires. I'll lay my stuff out on the mat first, and then I'll start stringing, and then I might string a different earring a little bit differently to see if I like that better. It's part of my process anyway, this, kind of trial and error with design. but it's fun. And when you're doing it for fun, you don't mind going through that process. It can be kind of relaxing. You're under no time schedule or anything like that. It's a little bit like putting together a puzzle. All right. So now I've got, flip this over. So now I've got my 2 earrings wired up. And that's good. I'm going to keep it like this. You know, you could decide to take a bead off and try it with just 2 beads, or add on a bicone on the top. Whatever you want to do, you want to decide how long and how heavy you want the earrings to be. But I'm satisfied with the look and the length, and so now we can start wrapping the wire. So I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I'm going to do a bend, and then I'm going to bring the wire back around both of them. And then I'm going to reposition my pliers. You can see you have a bit of a loop here. And again, I want to make sure I'm grabbing both wires. And I'm going to bring the wire towards the back. And as I'm going, I want to kind of straighten out my earring a little bit because it's getting a little out of control. And I'm going to reposition the wire, the pliers again. So that way I'm kind of getting this side view of the earring. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 ends here, and I'm going to just start wrapping them around this little bit of wire and go towards the bottom. And I'll do this 2 or 3 times until I'm happy with the look. And I'm just using my fingers for this because again, we're working with 24 gauge, so it's a very pliable wire. But you can also grab a second set of tools if you'd prefer to grab the wire and do the wrapping. That's also fine. So I'm happy with how that looks. And I am going to take my side cutters, or my flush cutters here. And I want to get as close to this as I can. And cut. And then I'm going to take the needle nose, the flat part of my pliers, the needle nose pliers here. Chain nose, I'm sorry. And I want to, I could try to get in there and trim a little bit more. But eventually you just have to take your pliers and bend the edges, the ends in. So now I want to decide if I need a jump ring or if I can just put the earring directly on my ear wire. So this is the front. And one way or the other, I want this to orient a certain way. And what I want it to do is I want to take my chain nose pliers and turn this so the loops actually face the front. And then I can open up my ear wire. And again, this is, oops, let's see, I don't want to lose this. So this is the front, which means you want the actual fish hook to face back. You want to get it through both of the wires. And then close up that gap. Like that. So you can see that the fish hook is facing the back where we have our other wire here. So that means when you put it through the ear, what you're going to see is the front. And again, because you're dealing with a malleable wire, and even with the regular head pins and stuff, you know, working with it, it can get a little bent out of shape, and so you just want to kind of straighten it out. Make sure it hangs the way that you want it to. So that's the first earring. And we'll just rinse and repeat. And I was about at the halfway point when I bent in, halfway point of my pliers. So I want to remember to do that. The same way on the second earring, so they match. Let me bring this further away. Sorry, my inclination is to want to bring this closer to me. And I realize that that may not be helpful for you all watching at home. So we're just going to wrap these around. And I'm only doing about 3 wraps. But it kind of makes that nice coiled effect there. Trim. And then I just want to kind of push those ends in. So they can't stick out. And then I want to make sure that the loop is facing front to back there. And just like with jump rings, when you're opening up an ear wire, you want to twist, not pull. So I want back of the ear wire to face the back of the earring here. And then I'm going to twist it back into place. And then I might just have to do a little turn to get it to close properly. So that is our first pair of earrings. So we'll just clean up a little bit before we move on to the second pair. I usually keep a plastic Ziploc bag on hand as my little trash bag. I find that it's great for holding all these little tiny sharp parts or even pieces of glass if a bead breaks. Just so that way it doesn't end up on the floor, because you don't want yourself, pets, kids, anybody to be stepping on it or pets to be eating it or anything like that. So so now we're going to focus on these, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to we want to inspect both sides and decide which side we want to use as the front. And let's see, the hole is here. And there we go. So I think we're going to do that. But instead of using the rhodonite beads, we're going to be using the moonstone beads and then probably 1 or 2 bicones, just like in the other pair. And so they're going to look a bit similar, but the chip beads add a different texture to it. I always liked chip beads because I thought it added an earthy texture to things. And using them with bicones is kind of like a diamond in the rough sort of vibe going on. So I'm going to grab some more wire, just like before. Now our main bead is not quite as big as this, so we may not need as much wire. It would help if I grabbed the right pliers. And there's the hole. And I just want to check the length. So now I'm going to bend this back. Oh, that's too short. Let's see. Okay. So I'm thinking probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out on the mat a little bit before I string. I'm thinking of doing about 3 beads with a bicone on the bottom and a bicone on the top. And I may, depending on how these fall on the earring, I may decide to do 5 when I string it all together. Okay, so that's the first bicone. And then I want to make sure that both my wires go through. And now I just looked at the holes on these, and it looked like it would take both wires. But if you get into a really lengthy project, you want to test out all your beads on the stringing material that you're using to make sure that the holes will accommodate the stringing material. And with wire is measured in gauges, and the bigger the number, the thinner the wire. But other stringing material is measured in millimeters. And so is hole size, and so is bead size. So you're going to be looking at a lot of your measurements in millimeters. So you want a hole size that's just a bit bigger than the millimeter size of your stringing material. Okay, and I'm happy with that. I don't think adding 2 more beads is going to get me anything. I think it might actually make it a little too long and unwieldy. And this is coming from me who likes my earrings very large. Okay. So I'm happy with how that looks. So now we're going to do things a little bit differently. Instead of bending and twisting the cord around like we did the last time, we're going to twist these 2 strands together so that way they become one twisted strand. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers with the flat edge there. I'm going to hold on to the tip top, and I'm going to just take this and start twisting. And you just kind of keep going at it until you get a look that you like with enough twists. It's getting there. Actually, that looks pretty good. And I tend to, when I do things for the most part, I tend to just finish off the earring completely and then do the next one. But you may choose to stop at this point and string your next earring, so that way you can compare your twists side by side and make sure that they look about equal to you. There's no right or wrong here. If you can finish one earring at a time, or you can do it in stages and design that way, whatever you are more comfortable with. And you might find it that in doing it in stages, you get more comfortable with the process, so then you're okay with kind of doing a piece straight through. But we're just going to go straight through. Oops. So like before, and then we're going to wrap it around. Okay, and then I'm going to get my brush cutters. And then take the flat edge of my pliers. And I'm sorry if this keeps coming in and out of focus. The camera on my phone is on automatic focus. So, okay, so now, unlike this pair here, the base bead doesn't move that much. Up with the wire up against it, it's pretty snug. This one seems to have a little more wiggle to it. And if you don't want that, then what you can do is you can flip it over and grab right around the middle part of the middle part of the bead, grab the wire and give it a little twist. To make that little curve in the wire. And that actually tightens things up. So now there's not the give that there was on this bead, and it's not moving around on you. We're going to take this and we're going to twist it. So that way the loop faces front and back. And we'll take our other ear wire and twist it open. And we want to line it up so that way the back of the ear wire faces the back of the earring. And then we're going to close it. Make sure that there isn't a gap that the earring can come off. And there we have it. And so we will just do this again. And this time I'm going to take off a little more wire because I felt like I came a little too close to the end the last time. And I don't want to waste wire, but I prefer to have a little bit more than I need and not run out, because you can't really add wire. You can always trim, but you can't always add. Okay. So I got my wires just about equal. And so I want to grab a bicone. And then I think that's, yeah, there we go. So with the chips, they're not always fully really center. The hole is not always centered to the bead. So when that happens, you just want to kind of grab another one. You know, I'm not being too picky about matching shapes and size, because that's the nature of a chip. They're not meant to be matchy-matchy. They're meant to be inconsistent. But the one thing you kind of want to do with consistency is you want to try to get one that's drilled more towards the center, so that way you don't have breakage, and so that way it lays correctly and stacks correctly, because you don't want one that's kind of hanging off to the side or that's going to snap off. So at least not on an earring. You might be able to get away with that in a bracelet, but you don't, even in a bracelet, you don't want something that's going to snap off. And it doesn't happen often. I mean, you might have a couple of little chips that you end up not really being able to use because of that. I just want to keep straightening my wires to make sure I don't get them all bent, and making sure that that bicone goes down as far as it will, that first bicone. And then I'm just laying it next to this earring before I do any wrapping, because again, I want to check and make sure I got the pattern right. Even though this was a pretty straightforward pattern, the other thing I want to check is that, again, while I'm not being too picky about having exact sizes match, I don't, with chips, you can have some that come out really thin and then some that come out a little chunkier. So I do want to make sure that side by side, the 3 chips come to approximately the same length, and I don't have a set of 3 chips that are a lot taller than the other, because then the earrings won't look right. They're, even though we're dealing with inconsistent sizes, we want to maintain some symmetry in the earrings. And again, when you're doing bracelets, with using chips, it doesn't matter as much. But in earrings, you do want to have some consistency. So I'm satisfied that this looks the way that I want it to. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, make sure I grab both wires, and then I'm going to start twisting. So now I'm going to go back to my round nose pliers, and I'm going to bend and reposition. And wrap. You can kind of see the twist is coming a little bit undone, so I probably should have twisted a little bit more. And then I just want to tuck in my ends. And then I'm going to do on the back of this one what I did on the back of the other one, just to grab the wire, give it a little twist to tighten it up. And I want my loop to be facing front and back. And just make sure that the ear wire is on correctly. And then make sure that it's closed and no gaps. And there's our second pair. So you can see that you can make a really nice pair of earrings without needing a ton of beads and not needing a lot of wire either. And, you know, doing the wire wrapping and the twisting, they're two really simple techniques that if you just practice with them, it will take you a long way in being able to do some different things. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I wish you all happy beading, and I'll see you next time.